Time for the Weekly Planet podcast show. So sit back, relax, and give us a go. Scott and Matt and maybe a guest have undertaken an epic pod quest. We're gonna ramble on about movies and books and television and film festivals and directors and all this other stuff that I really know nothing about because they made this really long list of things that they want to talk about and I can't even read through all of them, but it's gonna be great. Okay, start the show.
Hello and welcome to the Weekly Planet podcast, your weekly dose of all things movie, TV, books, and anything else we feel like talking about. My name is Scott Daly, editor-in-chief of DailyPlanetFilms.com, and I'm joined as always by my co-host and co-editor, Matt Freeman. Matt, episode 2 already.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, I'm definitely very excited. I think it's going pretty well. It's only been a couple days since we last recorded, but it'll be way far into the future for the people listening to this. A whole week, in fact.
Yeah. Well, we got a good show for them today, don't we?
We do. Today, we're going to be talking about the summer movies. I know it'll be almost October by the time you're listening to this, but we didn't have a podcast when summer ended, so we're just going to have to pretend like it just happened. We've got a great guest for you guys today. Contributor to the Daily Planet, James Gentry. James, thanks for coming.
Hey, everyone. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Glad to have you, man. Glad to have you. James, if you guys recall, wrote some excellent pieces on Game of Thrones. He's our resident Game of Thrones and Song of Ice and Fire expert, so I'm sure when that starts kicking up again next year, he'll have a lot to say about the next season.
Yep. It's our Westeros correspondent.
Looking forward to it. Hoping for some potential book talk as well, which is when stuff gets really interesting. But, definitely happy to contribute my one awesome piece to the Game of Thrones world and, to help kind of continue helping guys edit and, hopefully make something of this podcast. So,
absolutely. All right. So we're going to talk about the summer, which I thought was awesome. But before we do that, let's go around the table, the internet table, and see if there's anything new that any of you guys have been seeing, watching, doing. Matt, why don't you go first?
Sure, Scott. Recently I saw Tangled. Just kidding, I talked about that last week. What I wanted to talk about was...
I tried really hard not to laugh.
Yeah. But that was a good movie. But what I want to talk about this week is I read my mom's third book. She writes these books. She doesn't publish them, but she sends them to her friends and family, and they're extremely entertaining. And she works in all these like details about Houston, which is where I grew up, because they're like set in Houston, and they're all murder mysteries. And they're first of all, it's really fun to read a book that your mom wrote, for reasons that I hope are obvious. And then also, they're just really entertaining and just like, she's really good. She's a really good writer. She's really like detail oriented, and it's just a really neat thing to do. Unfortunately, I can't like point you to where the books are because she kind of circulates them because they're sort of. I think she would say they're like not final draft necessarily. They're not ready for publication, but it's just a neat thing to be able to read.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I had no idea that your mom did that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Are they like full length novels?
I don't actually know the word counts on them. They're probably all on the short side. I think they could probably serve as like paperback detective novels in terms of length. They're not 600-page George R. R. Martin books or anything like that, but they're really kind of a quick, entertaining detective story because she loves that stuff. She loves detective stories, and that's kind of what she likes to write. So
that's awesome.
Is it just like influence from other novels or like stuff that happens, real life stories, or kind of a little bit of both?
Yeah, I'd say a little bit of both. I mean, because it's neat because you can read a lot of, or I can because I know her so well. I read a lot of like our family history and stuff that happens in her life, but also like obviously things that she's pulled in from other stories and
For sure.
yeah,
Some good influences.
yeah. It's weird. It's weird reading something written by someone you know, because you see them in it, you know. Whereas when you're reading just like a random book off the shelf, you don't know the author, so you're
Right.
just seeing the words on the page.
Yeah, you're kind of creating the character as you start, you know. But in this case, you already know, you know, where they come from, the influences and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and a lot of people write kind of how they talk sometimes. So like when you're
Right.
when you're reading someone's writing, you can like hear them telling the story to you.
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. That's really
Very cool.
I wish I could read them.
Well, maybe someday I'll encourage. I admit part of the reason I mentioned them here is to encourage her to. She's probably listening. To encourage her to.
Hi,
publish
Matt's
them.
mom. All right, that's awesome.
Let us read them.
Gentry, how about you? What have you been up to?
Not much. I guess getting closer to October and Halloween season, and some of my lovely coworkers and friends been wanting to go see a bunch of movies, and so we saw The Visit last week, and
That's the M Night Shyamalan one, right?
yep, Shyamalan. M Night's I don't know what attempt over 10 times, I guess. Latest. This was the first M Night movie I saw in theaters, I think, since The Village, which I was not a fan of.
Okay,
Go ahead.
I think M Night has got a really bad rap, and I'm gonna write about this one day because I keep getting in arguments where I feel like I'm defending him. I think he's made way more good movies than he's made bad movies.
Yeah, I would say I actually like all of his movies that I've seen, just to different degrees. So I agree with you.
Well, I mean, I'll put it this way. There's the only one that I can say I truly just did not like flat out, thought was pretty terrible, even though maybe the beginning was interesting or that maybe the idea was interesting, was The Happening. I couldn't understand. You have Mark Wahlberg, who's kind of like an action guy. He's in all these fast-paced movies. A lot of running around. A lot of things kind of happening. And when you kind of mix that with like the mystery of M Night's movies, and then kind of the result of that ends up being actual human beings running from the wind. It just kind of threw me off. And I mean, like I said, I thought it was cool up until the point where they realized, like, oh my God, it's the trees. Like, run, like, duck, and then all of a sudden, they're running in a field. So of course you have some context for, what they're running from. But it's oxygen ultimately. So they should have all just died and killed, like they should have just killed each other. I don't know. I mean, it's sad because it was an interesting cast and stuff. And, I do like his movies. Like, I love Sixth Sense. It was kind of like the classic, big one, the reveal, the big twist. You see it once, you have no idea what's happening until the end. You see it again, you start to catch more things. I mean, like there's definitely, it definitely, set the ship for M Night to kind of bring in all these other ideas. My favorite is Unbreakable.
Yeah,
I think that's kind of a, I'm a fan of kind of these small stories, and I thought that was executed, very nicely. Not overbearing and stuff like that. And to me, it was just like great performances all around. I mean, people thought it was slow, maybe boring, maybe didn't really kind of understand. But I guess if you're just a general film enthusiast like we are, I don't mind sitting and kind of watching all the the different listening to the kind of the tone of the movie and seeing some of the angles and some of the different settings. I mean, it was very kind of a just dark and metropolitan type setting, but to me, like, none of that is like the characters really kind of took the forefront in their story to where I didn't really care about the rest of the stuff that was going on. So
that's really,
go ahead.
really good points.
Yeah.
I think now I'm having ideas that go through my head. I want to have an M Night podcast, just like we did with Nolan. I want to go through every single one of his movies.
Great.
I think the one thing I will say on The Happening, and I think I read this somewhere, I think it was Birth Movies Death or something, but it's such a bad movie that like only a really good filmmaker could make a movie that bad, if you get what I'm saying. Like it's so awful it takes skill to be that bad. And,
Right.
and I kind of like it for that reason.
Like as a joke, like something to
but
watch and
not,
kind of laugh
not like
at.
hate
Right?
watch, but just like
Yeah.
it takes skill to construct something that terrible.
It really does. I mean, I give him kudos for. I mean, he did his thing. Like.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't seen Lady in the Water. That is,
I actually liked that one.
Well, my close friend at work and my cousin are two people that I know that is might possibly be their favorite M Night movie.
Oh, wow.
And they absolutely love it because there's something about the fantastical nature of the setting, like the whole. I guess the atmosphere and Paul Giamatti. I love Paul Giamatti. So and Bryce Dallas Howard. So I haven't seen it. She actually lent it to me on DVD, so I guess I'll give it a watch soon. I can't really judge until I see. I really liked Signs, but I hated the ending. I'm sorry, but if you're an advanced alien race and you don't realize that, Earth is 70% water, and you can't touch it, that kind of killed it for me. But
Gentry, it's not about the aliens.
Yeah, I think that's the problem.
I know it's not. Right.
And that's the problem with all of his movies is that all of his movies are fairy tales ultimately.
Right.
And like we get confused because then he like read something like Signs that doesn't really feel like a fairy tale, and then it has certain elements in it that are jarring. It sounds like I haven't seen The Visit, but it sounds like with The Visit he sort of like retreated back to a much more real story with with the unrealistic elements only being like very well embedded. I don't know. I've read about it, but I haven't seen it.
I just realized we started this whole thing to talk about The Visit, and that's probably the first time we've actually talked about The Visit. So Gentry,
we can save everything. Yeah.
Is it good? I mean, just is it worth seeing?
The Visit was good. Yeah, he does. He brings it back. I think he realized. Does he write? Was he the writer of this?
I believe so.
So, the shaky cam was kind of a new deal, I guess.
It's kind of the found footage type style,
right? It's the shaky found footage, shaky cam type thing. I guess I didn't really know what type of movie I was going into. I mean, M Night, never know if it's something just real and bizarre or something supernatural and kind of, also bizarre, And so I wasn't sure if it was like going to be ghosts and or actual, other types of beings or whatever it is. Wait, I guess I should probably. Well,
No, don't spoil
I won't
it.
spoil anything. But what ended up happening was, I was interested. I was enthralled. I jumped in, and the shaky cam was. I have these two kids, and they were fantastic. I don't know who they are. They're obviously new and young, and they're actually kind of funny. And they kind of the older sister holds the camera, and she's really just making. She's making kind of like a documentary about her family, about her mother and her mother's relationship with her grandparents, her mother's parents. And so really her and her brother go to visit, and all of a sudden, right off the bat, or maybe after one or two scenes of, just kind of casual, getting to see your grandparents after this many years, because really they've never met them in this movie. So just think about it like that. Or in this story, and things just start to take quite a strange turn, like right off the bat, like M Night does, and I did enjoy it. I can't really say much without giving away kind of what what's actually in the back, but I do recommend you all, you guys, and of course, our audience should definitely go see it. It was very creepy at moments. The music was fantastic. I thought there were some really good. I thought there's some really good camera. The cinematography I think is definitely kind of what got me. Some really good establishing shots. But after that, it does meld into the shaky cam pretty nicely. It's not super crazy. Kind of like The Gallows was. Another scary movie I saw where it was.
I did not see that one.
It was very You're probably not missing too much. I mean, I guess the whole like creepy school thing was one thing. Like that was probably the only creepy thing about it. But yeah, like that was a very shaky movie. Almost to the point where one of the girls that was with us, she was upset because she was like, oh no, like this is pretty bad. I get motion sickness type of thing.
Oh yeah.
Luckily, we didn't have to like walk out or anything. We were fine. But no, this was actually pretty settled. So
Cool. Yeah, sounds good. Before moving on, the one thing that I'll say about that movie, and the reason I want to talk about M. Night in another podcast, is the dude financed this movie with his own money, and I think it's ridiculous that a filmmaker like him has to do that when he's made so many good movies.
I didn't realize. I had no idea that was the case.
No one would give him money to make it, so he made it with his own money. So
I'm glad he did. Honestly, I mean, like I said, every one of his movies that I have seen, except for The Happening, has elements that I really enjoy. That I wish maybe, obviously I think they were going somewhere, but, in this one I think he does kind of bring it back to his roots.
Great.
And
I'll check it out.
I think the thing about M. Night is that he's actually a really, really good director who's sometimes hampered by the stories that he writes. Like,
yes.
if you view him as a writer-director, then, like, he's a plus director and an inconsistent writer. And
Agreed.
That, yeah.
He's got high highs, but pretty low lows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, okay.
Well, that'll be exciting.
Yeah,
Well,
let's move on. I haven't really seen anything. I've been pretty busy. I watched one of the movies we're going to be talking about tonight. But next week, I am going down to Austin to spend a week at Fantastic Fest, which is a genre film festival down there. I've never been before. I'm incredibly excited. I have a ticket to the back half. The thing starts tomorrow, technically, so there's probably people getting there right now. But I have a pass only for the last 4 days. I'm still going to get to see most of the films, which is really what I want to go for, but I'm going to miss all the famous people and press and all that, and some of the parties, which is not a huge deal. But I'm really excited about that. I'm going to try to cover as much of it as possible on the site. I'm going to try to write some really quick reviews of some of these movies, but I'm going to be seeing, 4 to 5 movies a day, so it's going to be tough to keep up. But I'm really pumped. It's my first big film festival. So
it sounds like it's going to be really fun.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Really pumped for you, man. Excited to hear, not only just about the movies themselves, but definitely about the experience. I've never done anything like that. So.
Yep. I can't wait. Absolutely can't wait. I'm going down by myself. So that's kind of... It's actually, I think it's going to be cool because there's a few people that I talk to regularly on movie sites and Twitter that hopefully I'll be meeting up with and get to know a little bit better. So that's exciting.
Yeah, you absolutely should.
Yeah.
For sure. It's a great city to meet up with people. So
yeah, so that's really it for me. Hopefully I'll have a lot more to talk about next week after that. Some films that I haven't even ever heard of before that I'm going to get to watch. So I'm excited.
Cool.
All right, so the main event, summer. I thought this summer was incredible as far as movies went. There were so many good films. There were some bad films too. Some Fantastic Fours and Jurassic World and Terminator. Pretty awful. But at the same time, there were some really, really amazing films. I asked each one of you to pick your favorite and bring it for us to talk about here. I already know what your picks are. Little spoilers for how this process works. I'm not going to pretend like I don't know it. But, Gentry, why don't we start with you? Why don't talk about what your favorite movie is, and then we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely some good movies, that came out this year. It's nice to have a summer with some decent to really awesome blockbusters. I feel like we've been a little dry lately. So my pick was Ant-Man, and it's funny. It's we're talking blockbuster, but this is such a small it's such a small story in the big world of Marvel.
Because of the ants.
Yeah. Yes. Because the funny thing is
that is your bad joke of the podcast.
Yep. That would probably be more. That is me, after all. No, but yeah. So I guess I don't know. The thing that kind of sticks out to me is, a lot of friends, a lot of people I know and work with, family members, stuff like people don't really don't know, I guess, what Ant-Man's about. They think it's silly because it's a, it's an insect, it's a tiny bug, and they're like, well, how does this kind of fit? Well, it's Stan Lee, it's Marvel, and just have to give it a chance. I mean, I'll be completely honest. I didn't really know much about Ant-Man at all until I heard it was coming out. So I guess it was probably sometime last year that I started researching. But this, I thought this movie really hit the nail on the head for sure. Paul Rudd, another great actor, funny guy. Usually not in these types of roles at all. And I thought he was perfect. He was cast, great as Scott Lang, and not only that, but the way, the whole time I was thinking when the movie started was like, how does this kind of fit into the whole grand scheme of the of the MCU and the rest of the story that's attached to all the other Marvel movies, and right off the bat it's pretty seamless. I thought
it fits so well. It really does.
Kind of knocked it out of the park. From the beginning. I was a little worried. I was Evangeline Lilly, and it's like, yeah, I liked. I was a fan of Lost, but it's like I haven't really seen her like do anything different or actually act different. We'll disregard The Hobbit. Definitely not get into that.
I think everyone should just in general disregard The Hobbit.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't want to get into that rant. So I'll just kind of compare to, Kate from Lost and now, Hope Van Dyne. And I thought, I actually saw a lot of emotion in her character from the start. I thought it seems like she put a very great effort to kind of, come across as the daughter that, has these, underlying issues with her father. And, but at the same time is, connected to the, of course, the bad guy. And then, from there, it just fits well. It's I thought it was very well done in terms of, I thought the action was just right. Not too much, not cheesy CGI. I thought it was a good mix of practical and CGI together. I know Scott, you and I talked about some of the modeling that they did, some of the shots when he's actually. When he's in the Ant-Man suit and he's, tiny, those were real objects, correct? That they kind of filmed these angles?
Yeah. So they used a micro lens, basically, to take shots of real small stuff, and then they use CG to superimpose Ant-Man on top of that stuff. But it gives everything like a visceral feeling, because all that stuff's really there. And he's
absolutely
he's the only one being thrown into the shot. No, yeah. I agree with you. And you mentioned when you started talking about that people thought it sounded silly. And honestly, that's because it is silly. It's
right.
It's a funny movie. And it's, last week we talked about Christopher Nolan, and we talked a lot about Batman and this dark, gritty, serious superhero that the Batman movies were, and that when people proclaimed that as the best comic book movie, they thought that that's what all of their comic book movies should be. And I think Marvel, with their whole universe, but more than anything with this movie, has kind of said no. That that's not what we think a comic book movie is. We can think it's this whole other thing. And this is a movie with
for sure.
with really small stakes. It kind of the stakes kind of ramp up a bit at the end, but really it's a guy, just trying to help people out and provide for his kid. I mean, that's really what the story is, and it has so much heart. It's so funny. I mean, I going into this year, if you had told me that not only would this be my favorite Marvel movie of the year, considering that Avengers also came out,
right?
But I liked it. I liked it more than Avengers. But
so I haven't seen this movie, and I just wondered. It sounds like it just sounds like they're going for kind of a similar tone as like Iron Man, which is appealing to me because Iron Man is probably my favorite entry in the Marvel.
It's pretty fantastic
movie series so far. So how does it compare to Iron Man? Just as somebody who's interested in seeing it,
I think it's even a little sillier than Iron Man. I don't know, Gentry, if you would agree with that. I mean, it's really funny. Like the Michael Pena character, steals the movie. Yeah, I mean he's legitimately hilarious. And Matt, he actually plays a character in The Martian, and in the review I read today, says he kind of steals the movie and the scenes he's in that one too, and is really funny.
He's the pilot.
Yeah, he plays Martinez, the pilot.
Martinez, there you go. Yeah,
So-
exactly. He's
I
like
looked
kind of
up
the badass.
who Michael Pena is on my phone. I'm not talking to you.
He's definitely been in a lot of movies. Some serious and some pretty funny. Like he was in what's the one that won the Oscar that everybody hated with all the different problems that happened in LA.
Crash.
Crash.
Yeah, I
he's in
did not like Crash.
Right. Not a great example, but for some reason it kind of sticks. I guess,
No, your Iron Man comparison is actually really great because if you think about the movies, they're very similar. I mean, Marvel really hasn't introduced a new character in a while, like completely new introduction type thing. So this movie is very similar to Iron Man and how it introduces the character, shows him off, has him kind of grow through the process and come out a hero at the other end. I don't, for those who haven't seen it, because sadly, I mean, it did well here, but it didn't do super well, but that was okay because it had such a small budget compared to the rest of their films. So I don't want to fully spoil
Which is great.
For people
it has
that
so much room for growth,
Right.
when it comes out, when it's streamed, when it's on Blu-ray or whatever. I think it's going to be one of those. I think it's going to be one of those movies, kind of like not kind of a subtle hit, that people start when they see it at home. I think they'll be like, oh man,
Yeah.
I realize this is actually a really good story.
I will say, if those of you listening, if you like comic book movies, if you like Marvel movies, but you did not see this because, I don't know, it just looked weird and you had no idea who Ant-Man was, I think both me and Gentry were in the same boat. We both saw it, and it's awesome.
It's awesome, and
it's my second favorite Marvel movie. No, dead serious. Yeah,
I was gonna say, I know. I think it's definitely in my top 3. It's really, it's really hard. I had to figure out that list, but just turning, thinking about kind of the Dark Knight and Batman and some of the serious, turns that the industry went, in the mid to late 2000 or mid 2000s, 2010 or so. This kind of just turns it over and kind of shakes out, some of the funny, kind of, little casual kind of. It's something that could be, have some serious moments in it, but at the same time, it's still light. Right. You're not, crazy disturbed images on the screen or anything like that to totally turn you away or anything. It's still a impactful story, but in a smaller scale. Yeah. And the cast is really different. You don't think these people would kind of be on the same screen together, but it actually fit really well. I mean,
it did.
We haven't even mentioned Michael Douglas, and I thought he was fantastic.
Michael Douglas is the star of this film. I mean, don't get me wrong. Paul Rudd is great. He's funny. Michael Douglas is the heart, is the center of the film, and he's amazing. And can we talk for a second about there's a scene early in the movie where they have to make him look younger, and that's amazing. The de-aging, the CG de-aging they did on him in the flashback is holy crap.
That's got to be tough because we all know what young Michael Douglas looks like.
Right. Yeah, but they did such, and especially I think I had seen Terminator a week before I saw this. So I saw the terrible job they did de-aging Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then I walked into Ant-Man and saw Michael Douglas, and I'm like, God, they knocked it out of the park. Right? Yeah. So no, I'm glad you picked this movie because I wanted to talk about it. It wasn't my favorite of the summer, but I'm glad we got to talk about it. I think it's Marvel kind of saying we don't have to make the same kind of movie over and over again. I think there's a lot of people, I mean, honestly, myself included, we're kind of getting a fatigue a little bit from the Marvel movies. I mean, I loved Avengers 2. I thought it was really good, but it was so stuffed with things and so overpacked.
It was a lot.
It was just, and I was kind of
could have been a two-parter.
So this film is so much smaller, and it's really not even a superhero movie. It's like a heist movie, but one of the guys has superpowers. I mean, that's really what it is. He's got his team. They get together, they plan out the heist, and they execute it, and things go wrong. And I mean, that's really the heart of the movie.
Right. That's interesting because that's perfectly in line with my theory of how to write either fantastic or science fiction stories, which is that you take a completely mundane world and you put one very well defined and limited science fiction or magic element into it, and then you just let things play out.
Absolutely.
Like,
You have to.
which sounds like that's what this is. I mean, that gets to me my problem with essentially, most of the Spider-Man movies and all the Avengers movies is that it's just like everyone is magical and arbitrarily strong and powerful, and then we have long action scenes. What's the point of an action scene when there are no limits on what can happen? There can be no tension.
Right.
But if it's just like a guy in a suit and the suit has well-defined properties, then your brain can follow what's supposed to be like tense about this. And
absolutely. And
more fun.
the climax of the film takes place in a little girl's bedroom, which it's kind of cheating because they're also really small. So it's a little girl's bedroom, but it's a massive.
But it works.
Area. It works so well. Yeah. Like, God, there's some stuff I wish I could talk about, but I don't want to spoil for people because I want people to go see this movie so bad. I think it's coming to Blu-ray pretty soon.
Right.
Probably before Christmas. You guys need to go to Redbox, get it off iTunes, spend the couple bucks and watch this movie.
I'll end up purchasing for sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, the thing is like there's also, there's other movies too. Let's not forget. I mean, just because these people are having to save the world every single time, come from, obviously. Adapted from comic books and stuff. Like, we have, Guardians of the Galaxy, we have Deadpool coming out, we have Tony Stark, and Ant-Man. Like, there's these people, ultimately they are, people that have normal lives and stuff like that. So it's kind of nice when you get a little comedy and you can fit it right in without making the movie like too fractured or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean,
just off tilt.
I mean, in my opinion, comics are supposed to be fun. Yeah. I mean, you can have seriousness and fun. Seriousness in there too, and have it still be fun. But I mean, I want my movies like this to be entertaining.
Just not Batman and Robin fun.
No. Well, I wouldn't call that fun. I'd call that an abomination.
Yep, pretty much. But yeah. Anyways, go see it. See it, Matt.
Okay.
Matt. Okay.
Whenever it comes out on Netflix.
Yep.
Matt, I will mail you a copy of this.
All right. Sounds good.
Okay, so moving on, time to talk about my movie, and honestly, you guys are going to have to stop me at some point because I could talk about this movie for days. I have, to anyone who will listen. My favorite movie of the summer was Mad Max Fury Road. I watched it again, I just finished it like 10 minutes before we started here, and I think it's the fourth time I've seen it. It's the first time I've watched it at home. I saw it 3 times in the theater, which I never do with movies because I don't really have time to watch a movie over again that many times. But I kept wanting to go back. So this is the first time at home. I was still on the edge of my seat. This is the perfect summer movie. This is one of the best action movies I've ever seen, if not the best. It's incredible. It's remarkable. Like I could go on, and I will. But first, I want to know what y'all think of my favorite movie, and I hope you love it as much as I do.
Well,
so Matt, why don't you tell me how much you love my favorite movie and don't hurt my feelings.
I mean, I wish I didn't, so that we could argue about it and have a discussion. But it was almost like. And I think a lot of people were starting to just give up on action movies and just think like my favorite action movies were literally made in like the 80s, and nothing good has happened since then. Not really.
A lot of classics in the 80s. I don't blame you.
Yeah, but like what I mean is it's just like the recent years, and I mean like years, have just been full of a very different kind of action movie. Kind of the genre has moved into a different kind of tone, which is, I don't know, less enjoyable to me. And Mad Max is really a throwback to like the kinds of action movies that they used to make, while incorporating, of course, all the modern technology, and that allows them to make this just incredibly tightly made movie. It's just incredibly tense the whole time, every second.
Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of things that I want to talk about with this movie. the first one I want to get into, and Gentry, I know you and I have talked about this before, so I'll let you jump in here. Last week, Michael and I kind of got into a little argument about computer graphics, and I mean, it was as much of an argument as we get, and we don't really yell at each other, but we had some disagreements as far as CG and the proper place for it. This movie has a ton of computer graphics in it, but it also has a ton of practical effects as well, and it knows, A, how to mix them, 2, when to use them and not use them, and it to me brings so much to the film. The fact that every single one of these cars was real, constructed, working vehicle, that they really smashed into each other, like.
Well, that's the key, isn't it? I mean, it's the mixing, you know. I mean,
right.
It's so beautiful. I mean, it's first off, it's almost like looking at an art piece. I mean, I remember sitting in the theater, watching the scene where the sandstorm hits, and you know, just seeing. I mean, like it's not only was the camera work fantastic, and like I thought the zoom ins were great. You know, they kind of brought you in, but at the same time you're kind of looking around, and all of a sudden you get this aerial view of this ginormous sandstorm with whatever lightning type fusion stuff that's going on and stuff. And I just remember thinking like I'm looking at a beautiful painting right now. Like this is remarkable work. Like I can't believe. And at the same time, it still felt real, and not to bring up a horrible example of too much CGI, but if you think we have two settings, right? You have the desert, and you have people, and you have beings and stuff, and then you have vehicles, and you have a lot of action. Stuff is moving forward, right? Think about episode 1, the pod race. Never once. I mean, okay, I saw that movie when I was 99. We were obviously all young when we saw that. But even if after a few years, 3 to 5 years later, even then, you feel nothing. Not. I mean, aliens one thing, but you're like, okay, like it's a kids movie, whatever. But like, you just never really felt like anything was real. I felt like you're watching some kind of fancy animated, trailer cartoon type
right.
thing.
It's cold. It's cold and emotionless.
Yeah.
Where this movie is the opposite. I mean,
yeah. I feel sorry.
No, go ahead.
I feel like there's at least two things that make the difference. I mean, I guess using episode 1 pod race is actually a good example because they contrast perfectly. One is that that sandstorm scene you're talking about I think that was also my favorite part, just in terms of its beauty. They're driving into this enormous sandstorm that's full of tornadoes, and then you have trucks that are exploding, and the fireball gets sucked up into the tornado.
Yep.
And you're conscious of the fact that there was no better way to depict this. This was perfectly set, perfectly filmed. I mean, not to set aside the fact that most of it is CG anyway, but it's
right.
perfectly realized as a piece of art.
Yeah.
And then you compare that to the pod race, and at no moment in the entire pod race are you thinking this is a piece of art I'm looking at. It's just
right.
They had to show the things happening, and they picked an angle, and they just rendered it in their computer with minimal effort.
Every camera movement, every angle in this film is meticulously constructed and planned to bring about a certain emotional response.
Yeah.
We talk about the language of cinema. They should study this film in film school because every part of it. I mean, it's so good.
They really should. Yeah.
There's so many small moments. There's not to mention the fact that the way the film is structured. At the very beginning, you see every single item that they're going to be up against as the whole war party gathers together to fight them. You see every single piece of thing that they're going to fight, and then throughout the movie they slowly dole those out to you. But you see it all at the beginning; it's all there, which makes it feel real. And I mean, that's one of the big things about this movie is that it felt like a real world, like it was constructed so well.
It absolutely was.
that everything, and that's, I mean, George Miller, the director and writer, says that he had a backstory for every single character in this film. Mm-hmm. We don't learn almost any of them.
Yeah.
But we don't need to. Like, just the fact that they had it and the little hints of it we get is enough to make it feel like a real lived in world. It's so incredible.
That ties into the second thing I was going to emphasize about that scene, which is that in the sandstorm, for example, you've got, at least 3 really important characters who are actually all at that point in time at odds with each other. So it's like a three-way conflict, not even just like this guy's trying to get this guy, but I don't remember anybody's name, but the guy
Max?
with Max, Max, and Charlize Theron, and the other guy,
Nux,
Nux,
who I want to talk about in a bit because he's my favorite character.
Well, then I'll wait to go into it more. But basically Nux is after Charlize Theron, General Furiosa. Max is, man, I don't even remember what's going on. It's tense because there's so many things going on between these 3 characters, and it's like you have bought into their like storylines individually, so you're actually sort of rooting for all 3 of them, even though they're at that time enemies.
Right.
You're even rooting for Nux, who's like following Hitler basically. Yeah. But just because of like how pathetic he is and how earnest he is.
Yeah.
And compare that with the pod race, where your only actual human is wearing a helmet and you can't see his face, and the stakes are that he might lose a race.
Right.
Well,
and like the thing that that I really enjoyed, or the thing that kind of like set me on, set the path for the whole movie. The intro. I mean, not only the intro, but like kind of the setup. Like you said, they go and they don't even take a lot of time. At the headquarters, in that crazy, base that's set in the canyons or in the cliffs or whatever it is, and but you still get some of the different conflicts that are happening without even many words being said, which is great because it translates. I mean, the thing. I mean, picture like the movie being like, it could have just as easily been 40 minutes in this place, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, here's Fury Road, right? This is why it's named Fury Road. But it does it so perfectly. It's like, 10 minutes maybe? Like 15, not even, tops, and then boom, they're on the road. And even at that point, after it's, cut to this next, sequence, I already have a general idea of who's, fighting with who and who's running from who, and what Nux's story is kind of about, and what his, and just from their, the looks on their face and kind of, the nods and stuff like that, and it's just, I don't know, I was pretty impressed.
That's actually a really great point. And not to pick on Christopher Nolan, except I love picking on Christopher Nolan. This movie has barely any dialogue and manages to convey everything it needs to over the sparse dialogue that it has, plus atmosphere,
which is amazing when movies
background
can do that.
Stuff. Yeah, it's
incredible, and mix that with like the beautiful shots and the action.
Right.
I mean, it's like
and there's
trifecta,
even stuff. I've seen it 4 times now, so there's stuff I pick up on that I didn't the first time. But just because I wasn't consciously picking up on it doesn't mean you're not subconsciously learning about the world as you see stuff go by, right?
Exactly.
And it's so, every shot's so detailed. There's so much in each shot. The prop work, like I've watched all the special features on the Blu-ray because that's the person I am. But they thought out everything and they built this world, and it pays off so well, even if you're not consciously realizing that it is.
Scott, did you tell me about this? How they actually, like during the action scenes that are typically confusing, they did this thing where the most salient thing in the shot is always centered in the frame, and so as crazy stuff's happening, you're not also having to like scan around the screen. You just you just sort of keep your eyes in one spot, which sounds like, once you hear that, you're like, why don't all action movies do that? That sounds obvious. Yeah, but it's like well, that's obviously why it's so. The action scenes are so smooth, and like literally at no point in this entire movie, which is almost entirely like one long car chase, are you like confused about where things are relative to each other,
Right.
or where characters are, or anything like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're kind of running out of time. As much as I want to keep talking about this movie, so a couple quick points. The fact that Furiosa is really the main character of this film is awesome to me.
Yep.
It sets that up from the very beginning when, during the intro credits, both Max and Furiosa's name are up there at the same time with their actors. It sets up that this is not a movie just about Max. In fact, it's a movie where Max plays a pretty small part. He doesn't even get the thing off his face to show his full face until I looked this time 45 minutes into the film.
Wow. Yeah. I wondered about that.
So, yeah, I mean, this is Charlize Theron's movie, and it's amazing. I mean, like, I talked about it in my review, so I won't get into it super a lot, but it's a strong feminist movie, and that pissed a lot of people off. But it does feminism in such a smart, like, clever, amazing way that, like, I don't understand how it could piss people off. I mean, all the women in this movie are real characters, even the small characters, even each of his wives has their own
story.
personality trait, their own mini arc. I mean, and it's so well constructed. Like, it's just incredible. The last thing I will say is Nux has the greatest arc in this film. Out of any of the characters, he goes from a person that all he cares about is using his half-life to die for the person he worships so he can go to heaven, Valhalla, whatever.
Valhalla, yeah.
Throughout the course of the film, he almost completely 180s, and his death at the end of the movie, sorry, spoilers for people that haven't seen it, his death at the end of the movie is a death for a complete opposite reason. It's death to help other people. And that is like the perfect arc. And it's done so expertly and so smallly over the course of the film, considering that he's not really the main focus of the movie. But it gets just enough time for you where you can slowly see that transformation. And it's just incredible. It's incredible.
Well said, Scott. Yeah. It's almost like I've never seen such a almost like a lineup of these heroes in a way where some, you have Max, who's kind of like the hero on the surface, but not really, he's kind of the, anti-hero-ish kind of decent guy.
And he doesn't really have an arc.
No, he doesn't even have an arc.
I mean,
He's
he's pulled into, he has a little bit, he's pulled into this thing. He doesn't want to be pulled into it. He's kind of just there for himself. And his arc is at the very end, he decides to help these people, right? I mean, that's his. It's not a big one. It's not really his movie. I mean, it's Furiosa's movie.
I would just point out that he wanders away at the end, and it's like, well, he's just back to where he started.
Right.
But
Oh yeah. Well, that's a good point. Yeah. But that's because he helped them to be in this world, but it's a world he doesn't belong in, really.
Yeah.
This is a perfect movie.
We can talk about this for forever.
Everything's perfect in it. The music's perfect. The writing's perfect. The cinematography is perfect.
Yeah.
I would hate to be the movie that has to follow this movie in this podcast. So, Matt?
well, luckily the movie is Inside Out.
The Pixar movie.
From Pixar, which, I really liked Mad Max 2, and Inside Out was the only other movie that I saw this summer in theaters.
Matt, you're not supposed to tell people that. You're supposed to pretend that you've seen them all.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, it's the only other movie that I saw in... Wait, I'm doing this wrong.
No, you still... the cat's out of the bag.
See, that leads into to what I was going to say, which is that the reason is that I have two very small kids. And for me, like, I can't do a before and after because I only saw this movie after having kids. But, like, this movie definitely lays on the feels for me. Like it's a lot of things become more emotional and whatever when you have kids, like a lot of movies, and this was definitely one of those because you're not just watching it like putting yourself in various situations, but you're definitely like putting your kids in situations, putting yourself in the father's situation, which I probably wouldn't have done before. So this movie definitely definitely was aimed at hitting the parent feels. That was the first thing I wanted to say. I guess, yeah. Scott, did you find this to be an emotionally heart-wrenching movie, or was it just sort of like, oh yeah, it's a Pixar movie?
No, I did. I don't have kids, but Pixar knows how to make you emotionally destroyed. It's just they're skilled at it. They know how to do it. They know how to construct all these things. And this movie, it's funny because, this is a summer. Summer blockbusters are movies. We talked to Ant-Man a little bit. Are movies with huge stakes, right? Like, got to save the world, save the future, or stop dinosaurs from being dinosaurs, I guess. This movie had the biggest stakes of the summer, I thought, because it's literally the well-being of a girl. Like, that's what they're fighting for in the movie. I mean, like, they made it very clear throughout the film that if things aren't repaired in this little girl's mind, she will be irreparably damaged for the rest of her life. And, like, it set those stakes, and you're along for the ride every time, and you're kind of scared to death for her.
Yeah.
And then like, the movie kind of unfolds its theme in such a clever way that, like, about midway through you start to realize, oh, I get what they're doing.
Yeah.
And you're like, holy crap, that's brilliant.
Right. While you're watching it, and it also, like, it's unusually fun to think about and talk about afterward, because you spend the whole next day analyzing all the metaphors.
Right.
And
So I know that they're, I hear that, or I guess I have not seen this movie, but the little tidbits that I've read and, from the trailer, I guess it's, what is it, like characterizations of her personality, I guess?
It's emotions. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Emotions.
there's joy, sadness, anger, disgust, and fear. And these are the five. These are the five These are the five emotions, and it's interesting that they apparently went by the research of this scientist Paul Ekman, and who, according to him, these are basically, according to his research, these are the fundamental emotions. He also adds surprise, but they decided that surprise was not really going to work in the movie.
Yeah, not going to make it.
well, and
Which
I
I
don't
think
think
is
you want too many characters, because I think the point gets across with what they have there.
Yeah.
And really the big conflict is between joy and sadness, and the others are there just to show what things are like without those two emotions
Right.
It's very
being
cool
in
idea.
sync with each other.
Yeah, I mean, I there's definitely not enough time to go into it, like into how precisely the metaphors are used. Like, even small things that you're just like, oh well, this, anger has to do this at this point because the plot, requires it. But it's like, well, actually, if you view all of this as a metaphor for what she's going through, then anger, the emotion, not the character, would be the force responsible for this particular shift in her personality. Like, there's one part which is, like, really affecting to the viewer, where like, both joy and sadness are removed from, like, the control room, so they can't really do anything, and anger basically, like, tries to take over, and he, like, overdoes it, and he breaks the control system. And then she just goes, like, completely affectless and just, like, sort of wanders away. And like, her plan, spoilers, her plan is to run away.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, what a perfect metaphor for what, like, depression actually is. Because depression isn't sadness.
Absolutely.
Depression is, like, becoming, like having no feelings.
Yeah, just being emotionally dead.
Yeah,
right.
being emotionally dead. And that's like, like, she almost burned it out, and now she can't access her emotions anymore, and her emotions were sort of what was keeping her functional. This is a great movie for pointing out that, like, humans rely on emotions. We are extremely emotional creatures. We sort of are emotional creatures with a thin layer of the ability to reflect on what we've done and stuff like that.
Yeah, and not just emotions in general, but how important being sad is to your emotional well-being. Like you said, there's a lot of people that consider depression and sadness the same thing, and they're really not. I mean, we like, this is a movie that says not only is it okay to be sad, but it's fundamentally important to being a well-rounded, emotionally healthy person.
Right.
And it takes that point of view by showing sadness as kind of the instigator of the conflict at the beginning. But then you realize throughout the course of the film that sadness was just attempting to fix everything in the best way for the kid, and that I think, and Matt, you can speak on this. I think it's resonating as a person, but also as like a parent, because as a parent, you would think that the last thing you would want is for your kid to be sad. I mean, you want to do anything in your power to keep your kid happy. So I look at the Joy character as a very parental character for her, because like she's like, I have to keep her happy all the time. This is my job. They have to be happy. But that's not. Sometimes you just gotta cry. Sometimes you just gotta be sad. And that's like, it was so well told. And the thing that, and sorry, I'm talking a lot, but the thing that that was surprising to me is this is a kids movie, right? This is a kids movie that is so deep and layered that adults like us can sit here and analyze it. But the main themes, the main points, I think kids can understand. Not to a deep enough level to where they get kind of everything behind it and they understand why it's great, but they get it, right?
Yeah, I think they get. I think they get what he's trying to say, even if they like. Part of it is life experience. I mean, it didn't occur to me until actually long after I saw the movie, but I was like, so there's this concept of core memories in the movie where they're basically saying like your personality is rooted in core events in your life. And these become part of the narrative of how you define yourself. And I was like, well, do I have core memories? And I was like, oh, yeah, I can probably think of some core memories. And then I was like, okay, are these... So in the beginning, all of her core memories are joy. Like they're all dominated by joy. And I'm like, well, my core memories are definitely not all dominated by joy. Some of them are definitely, very tinged with sadness. Some of them are definitely very tinged with anger. It may be a righteous anger. It's complicated. You definitely have all of these forces at play there. Right. And I definitely wanted. It's funny, Scott. You literally just made me realize this. But my daughter is always when we're watching a movie. She hasn't seen this movie, but when we're watching other movies, she's always asking, "Is that character happy? Is that character sad?" And those are the only two emotions that she asks about. And she knows about other emotions, but she only ever asks about happy and sad. And that to me is fascinating because, like, according to this movie, those are sort of the basic poles. I don't know. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. No, and I think to expand about what you were talking about earlier, you're talking about when you're young, and like this character was, most of your core memories, those that define your personality, are joy. And I think that's being a child, right? Like when you're a kid, the things that you most remember are the fun things. But you're right. I sit here and I think about what are the events, the memories in my past that have most shaped the person that I am. And very little of those are happy, right? Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say that there are not some. There are definitely some happy memories, but the things that shape who you are a complex range of emotions. A lot of them are very sad memories, but they serve to level set expectations. I think the moment in the film when they show that the happy memory that she thought she had was actually a sad memory until a certain point, right? I mean, like, without a moment of sadness, it's difficult to define what being happy really is, right? Because you have no comparison. And, I mean, that's what this film did so well. We haven't even really... We've just really been talking about the story, which is phenomenal, obviously, but the animation was great, too.
I was wondering, I was going to say, like, exactly, like what, I'm just looking at this lineup of Pixar movies. It's just like, wow, they've hit so many grand slams. It's insane.
Yeah. And honestly, and I don't know if y'all, or Matt, you agree with me, I think this is the best movie they've ever made. I really think this is their masterpiece.
I was going to ask y'all, where do y'all think it falls? Because, I mean, wow. I mean, like...
Number one with a bullet for me.
I might have to see it again, because that's really interesting, because, okay, let me be honest. when I walked out of the movie, I was a roiling sea of feelings, because of the way the movie affects you, and also just because I wasn't sure if they had pulled across the metaphor. Like, I wasn't sure if they'd pulled it off. Like, because there were several things where I was like, oh, that's kind of lazy. And then, like, later, I was like, no, that wasn't lazy. Like, that was just really, really subtle. And now that I've thought about it, it was actually perfect. And on reflection, I can't think of anything that wasn't, like, extremely clever and tightly done and, like, as an allegory. Or I don't think it's an allegory. It's a metaphor.
Yeah.
All the stuff in her head is a metaphor.
Right.
So I have to see it again because, like, they've made so many good movies. I can't necessarily just say it's the best movie, but it's definitely a contender.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it, having not seen a lot of the movies in a long time, but I am not afraid of making bold declarations that I can't back up in any way, shape, or form. So I'm going to continue to do that.
So I'm going to make the bold declaration that it's not necessarily the best movie.
How bold? So bold.
Well, it's in great company. I mean, I'm
Absolutely.
looking at
These
Toy
guys...
Story, Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, Incredibles, Brave, Up. I mean, Pixar is ridiculous.
And they've got another one coming out this year.
The dinosaur one or something like that?
Yeah, that one has had a rocky past. We'll see how it holds up.
Here it is, The Good Dinosaur.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen a trailer for that, but...
They've only made one little teaser trailer, but it looks interesting. It's kind
I
of...
would say the... Oh, go ahead.
It's kind of like photorealistic looking backgrounds with a very cartoon looking dinosaur, which is an interesting choice.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know. We'll see.
Cool style.
But,
I was going to say, so, I mean, just piggybacking off that, so the animation for this movie, I mean, I think I saw one trailer for it, honestly. Was it pretty spot on? Pretty good?
It's really good. And, I mean, I talked about this in my review, which is a while ago now, but Pixar likes to make it hard for themselves. So all the characters have this, like, shiny, like, floaty quality because they're just, like, physical manifestations of emotion. So they kind of, like, they don't have hard stops to their bodies. They just kind of fade into the background, which, I mean, it's got to be a pain in the ass to animate. Like, I can't even imagine.
Oh, I was
that's
reading
good that they still challenge themselves.
Yeah. It was a huge deal for them to do that. Like, it made it a lot more expensive to have to do that.
But they're always... whatever to them works best for to tell their story, they'll do it.
Exactly.
One really interesting thing about Pixar is that they're actually competing with Disney now.
Yeah.
Whereas there was a period of time where they were just sort of destroying Disney. Are you
going to talk about Tangled again?
No. Well, I could actually, but I'm actually going to use another great movie, Frozen, which I've seen approximately 300 times now.
God, Matt, let it go.
And
that will be the second bad joke of the podcast.
Terrible.
Wait, is it such a good song?
Is it Disney owns, or is DreamWorks separate?
Well, Disney and Pixar, like, I think they're like
same
separate
company,
silos,
but competing against each other. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're definitely different. Like, okay, so Frozen. I was just bringing up Frozen to point out, like, the level of say anything you want about it. The level of precision in the character animations is incredible. Like tiniest little movements and and facial expressions where you're just like that is what a really good human actor would do with their face right there.
Right.
Like or like how they look at that person are just like, I mean, the types of things you just aren't used to seeing in animated movies where like somebody will give like the tiniest little hint of a smile while glancing to the side, and like that's the expression, and like, yeah, of course you catch it because you're a human and you're super attuned to catching these things. So they usually don't put these things in animated movies because they're just too hard to do. But these are
it's a pain. Yeah.
Frozen is full of these, and now I think Pixar is like, okay, we can't really get away with. I don't want to say get away with because they've obviously been doing great. Like obviously they're doing something right, but like I think Disney is actually pushing them. Specifically in the scenes in the real world, not in her head, where there's like real human characters. Those are really affecting because, like, you see the characters being emotional and you're affected by that. The more convincingly emotional they are, the more realistic that is, the more affected you are. And that was a huge component of this. There's like the emotional climax is between her and her parents, and it's just, there's not a dry eye in the house, and I think it's largely because of the quality of the face animations.
Wow.
Awesome. All right. Well,
Very nice point.
We are pushing up against our time limit here. And by pushing up against, I mean we've blown it out of the water once again. But, that's okay. I think we had some really interesting conversations here. These are all 3 great movies. If any of you out here have not seen any of these movies, go see them as soon as possible. They're not in the theater anymore, obviously. Summer's over. But they will be coming out on streaming and Blu-ray and anything you can think of. You need to take the time to see these films, I think. So, great. I think we should do this again at the end of the year. Hopefully, right now Mad Max is my favorite movie of the year. Maybe by the end of the year that will have changed. Or I'll just come and talk about Mad Max again for 30 minutes.
Let's do a whole hour on Mad Max.
Yeah, let's do 5 hours. Let's talk about.
Absolutely.
Let's watch the movie and talk about it as we watch it.
And then we can just make fun of episode 1 at the end.
It's too easy. It's too easy.
But it is Oscar season, so looking forward to another.
Yeah, there's a lot of good films coming out at the end of this year. I think there's going to be a lot to talk about. So we will make sure to do that. We will be back next week. Matt, once again, we have not come up with a topic yet, but I'm sure we'll pull something together. I'll be gone all week, so I'm not sure exactly when we're going to do that recording, but we'll make it work.
Figure it out.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
All right, so James Gentry, thank you very much for being a part of this. It was great to have you on. Hopefully we'll have you back some other time.
Thanks very much, guys.
If people want to find you, where can they find you? On Twitter, what's your name?
But on Twitter, it's let's see, at Wench Tweet. Yeah, I'll have to work on that.
No, it's perfect.
So I have a nickname. So yeah, basically just at Wench Tweet, and then I guess that's pretty much it. Everything else is. I'm only at the Twitter at the moment, so I don't really give out my Facebook stuff. But
that's fine.
Yeah,
Matt, where can people find you if they want to stalk you creepily?
I tend to hang out on Twitter at MORIDINAMAEL. I don't ever spell that.
And we will put that in the show notes.
That's
because no one's going to be able to find
we'll put mine as well, and also I guess my Instagram if anyone wants to follow there, but nothing too exciting on that. So
okay, you can reach me at Scott Daly 85 on Twitter, or Daly Planet Films on Twitter, or you can find all of our writing at www.dalyplanetfilms.com.
Daly, D-A-L-Y.
Yeah, D-A-L-Y, sorry. That's my last name. I like to name everything after me because I'm so amazing. But all right, great. Thanks again, guys. And we will see you next week.